Imagine a world where a single nation's flag flew over a quarter of the globe, where a single power could influence trade, language, culture, and politics across continents. That nation was Britain, and that was the era of the British Empire, a world-spanning force that shaped the lives of millions. But what happens when that power begins to fade? When the world moves from control and dominance to collaboration and partnership? Today, we explore not just history but transformation, the journey of Britain from imperial ruler to a partner in a global Commonwealth. To truly understand Britain's journey from empire to Commonwealth, we must first step back in time and explore the historical background that set the stage for this monumental transformation. The story begins centuries ago, during the Age of Exploration, when Britain was a small island nation on the edge of Europe, yet filled with ambitions that would one day span the globe. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, Britain began its first ventures overseas. Fueled by trade, curiosity, and competition with other European powers like Spain, Portugal, and the Netherlands, Britain set out to establish colonies in the Americas and later in Asia and Africa. The founding of Jamestown in 1607 and the establishment of trading posts in India marked the beginning of a long and complex process of expansion. These early ventures were not just about land, they were about influence, commerce, and the desire to control resources that were crucial for economic growth and national power. The 18th and 19th centuries marked the height of the British Empire, a period often described as the empire on which the sun never sets. By the 19th century, Britain had become the world's leading industrial power, its economy fueled by coal, iron, and the innovations of the Industrial Revolution. This industrial strength enabled Britain to project its influence across oceans, establishing colonies in Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. British ships carried not only goods but also ideas, legal systems, education, and language, leaving a lasting imprint on societies worldwide. Trade and commerce were central to this expansion. The British East India Company, for example, became a powerful political and economic entity in India, shaping not just trade but governance and society. Similarly, in Africa, the scramble for colonies in the late 19th century was driven by the desire for raw materials, markets, and strategic control. The British Empire's reach was immense, touching every continent and every ocean, and its influence on global politics, economics, and culture was unprecedented. Yet, the empire was not simply a story of progress and prosperity. It was also a story of conflict, resistance, and complexity. Colonized peoples often endured exploitation, displacement, and cultural disruption. The transatlantic slave trade, colonial wars, and policies of economic extraction left deep scars that would reverberate for generations. At the same time, colonized nations developed their own forms of resilience, culture, and identity, often blending local traditions with elements of British influence. These interactions, while unequal, laid the foundation for the multicultural and interconnected world we know today. The 20th century brought dramatic changes. 2 world wars weakened Britain economically and militarily, while nationalist movements across Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean challenged the legitimacy of imperial rule. India's independence in 1947 was a watershed moment. It demonstrated that the era of formal empire was coming to an end, and that former colonies could assert their sovereignty and reshape their futures. Independence movements were not isolated. They spread across the globe, from Africa to the Pacific, redefining the political map of the 20th century. It was during this period of transition that the idea of the Commonwealth of Nations emerged. Unlike the empire, which was based on control and hierarchy, The Commonwealth was founded on principles of voluntary association, shared history, and mutual cooperation. It offered a new framework for former colonies and Britain to maintain connections without domination. The Commonwealth became a platform for dialogue, cultural exchange, and collaboration, emphasizing equality, development, and the promotion of democratic values. The transformation from empire to Commonwealth reflects broader changes in the global order. The world moved from a system of empires and colonies to one of independent states connected by diplomacy, trade, and shared challenges. Britain's ability to adapt to this new reality demonstrates the importance of flexibility, vision, and respect for sovereignty. It also illustrates that influence can be maintained not only through power and control, but through cooperation, respect, and shared goals. Understanding this background is essential for appreciating the significance of Britain's global transformation. The empire shaped nations, economies, and cultures, but it was also challenged by the forces of change, resistance, and self-determination. The emergence of the Commonwealth symbolizes the ability to convert historical ties, however complex, into a framework for positive engagement and collaboration in the modern world. In essence, Britain's journey from empire to Commonwealth is not just a story of a nation. It is a story of the evolution of global relationships, the rise of new nations, and the creation of international networks that transcend the legacies of the past. It is a story of adaptation, reflection, and progress, showing that history is not static but dynamic, shaped by both ambition and the willingness to change. The background we have explored, the rise of the British Empire, its economic and political power, the struggles and resistance of colonized peoples, and the eventual creation of the Commonwealth, sets the stage for understanding one of the most profound transformations in modern history. This context allows us to appreciate not only the scope of Britain's influence, but also the lessons learned from an era of both greatness and challenge. By examining this historical backdrop, we gain insight into the forces that shaped the modern world. We see how Britain's global role shifted from dominance to partnership, how former colonies emerged as sovereign nations, and how the Commonwealth became a symbol of cooperation, dialogue, and shared responsibility. It reminds us that transformation is rarely immediate or simple. It is a process shaped by economic realities, social pressures, political movements, and the enduring human desire for freedom, dignity, and progress. As we reflect on this history, we can better understand the challenges and opportunities of today's global community. The background of Britain's empire and its transformation into the Commonwealth teaches us that influence is most meaningful when it is exercised with respect, collaboration, and a recognition of shared humanity. It is a reminder that history is not merely a record of the past, but a guide for shaping a more inclusive, cooperative, and sustainable world. Having explored the historical background of Britain's vast empire, we now turn to the heart of the story, the transformation from empire to Commonwealth. A journey that reshaped Britain's role in the world and redefined the relationships between nations. At its height, the British Empire was a formidable global presence. From the Americas to Africa, from the Indian subcontinent to the Pacific Islands, Britain's reach was unparalleled. Yet empire, for all its grandeur, was built on fragile foundations. Political, economic, and social pressures both within Britain and across its colonies were steadily reshaping the world. By the early 20th century, cracks had begun to appear in the imperial edifice. The two world wars of the 20th century were pivotal turning points. Britain emerged victorious, but the cost was enormous. Economically weakened, politically exhausted and facing rising calls for independence from colonized peoples, Britain could no longer sustain the empire in its traditional form. The wars had also accelerated the spread of ideas about self-determination, equality, and national sovereignty. Former colonies, having contributed soldiers, resources, and ingenuity to the war efforts, were no longer willing to remain under foreign rule. India's struggle for independence became the defining moment in this transformation. Led by figures such as Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, India employed a combination of nonviolent protest, civil disobedience, and political negotiation to demand freedom from British rule. The movement captured the world's attention and inspired other colonies to envision a future free from imperial control. In 1947, India achieved independence, and Pakistan followed shortly after. This marked the beginning of the end for Britain's formal empire, signaling that the era of colonial domination was drawing to a close. The decolonization movement spread quickly across Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. Countries such as Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and Malaysia gained independence, often after intense struggle and negotiation. Britain faced the challenge of reconciling its imperial past with a new vision for international engagement. Simply withdrawing from colonies without maintaining some form of connection risked losing influence entirely. It was in this context that the concept of the Commonwealth of Nations gained prominence. The Commonwealth was revolutionary in its approach. Unlike the Empire, which was hierarchical and coercive, the Commonwealth was built on the principles of voluntary association, equality, and mutual respect. Membership was open to any nation that shared a commitment to democracy, human rights, and development, regardless of its colonial history. It transformed Britain's relationship with former colonies from one of the first Commonwealth countries, demonstrated the potential of this new model. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, initially self-governing dominions within the empire, became influential members of this voluntary association. Over time, the Commonwealth expanded to include nations in Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and the Pacific, bringing together countries with diverse cultures, languages, and histories. This diversity became one of the Commonwealth's greatest strengths, allowing for dialogue and cooperation across continents and communities. Economically, the transformation was equally significant. Trade patterns, once dictated by imperial priorities, began to reflect mutual benefit and collaboration. The Commonwealth provided a platform for developing nations to engage in global commerce, share resources, and address challenges such as poverty, inequality, and environmental sustainability. Education and cultural exchange programs helped foster understanding between nations, creating a sense of global community rooted in shared history rather than domination. Politically, the Commonwealth offered a forum for addressing international issues collectively. While it did not wield the authority of an empire, its influence lay in diplomacy, moral authority, and collaboration. Conflicts between member states could be addressed through negotiation and consensus rather than coercion, demonstrating that power in the modern world could be exercised responsibly and ethically. The story of Britain's transformation is not without challenges. The legacy of colonialism, including economic disparities, political instability, and social divisions, continues to influence many Commonwealth countries. Yet, the transition from empire to Commonwealth represents a conscious effort to move beyond these historical burdens. It reflects the ability of a nation to acknowledge past mistakes, adapt to changing circumstances, and create a framework for constructive engagement in a globalized world. Culturally, the Commonwealth has become a platform for celebrating diversity while recognizing shared heritage. Events such as the Commonwealth Games, educational scholarships, and cultural festivals highlight the connections between nations and foster a sense of belonging and mutual respect. Language, legal systems, and governance structures introduced during the imperial period have been adapted and integrated into local contexts, reflecting both continuity and transformation. At the same time, Britain itself underwent a transformation. No longer an imperial power, it had to redefine its identity and role on the global stage. Soft power, rather than military dominance, became the primary tool of influence. Diplomacy, trade, education, and cultural exchange became key instruments in maintaining relevance and fostering goodwill. The Commonwealth provided a framework through which Britain could remain engaged internationally, not as a ruler, but as a partner. The journey from empire to Commonwealth also provides a broader lesson about the evolution of global relationships. It demonstrates that power is not static, and that influence is most effective when exercised through respect, collaboration, and shared purpose. The British Empire, once defined by conquest and control, evolved into a network of nations committed to cooperation, dialogue, and progress. This transformation reflects the adaptability of nations and the capacity for history to be reshaped in ways that prioritize humanity over dominance. In conclusion, the main story of Britain's global transformation is one of decline, adaptation, and renewal. From the heights of imperial power to the challenges of decolonization, Britain navigated a complex path to redefine its place in the world. The creation of the Commonwealth marked a shift from authority to partnership, from control to collaboration, and from hierarchy to equality. It is a story that highlights the resilience of nations, the power of dialogue, and the enduring importance of shared values. As we reflect on this journey, we see that history is not merely about conquest or decline. It is about the ability to transform, adapt, and build relationships that endure across generations. The transformation from empire to Commonwealth is a testament to the power of change, the value of cooperation, and the possibility of creating a global community rooted in respect, understanding, and shared purpose. Every great transformation is defined by turning points, moments when decisions, events, or movements change the course of history. Britain's journey from empire to Commonwealth is no exception. Let us explore the pivotal turning points that reshaped the British Empire and laid the foundation for the modern Commonwealth. The first turning point: the Industrial Revolution and global expansion. The Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th centuries was the first major turning point in Britain's global influence. Industrialization gave Britain unprecedented economic power, enabling it to expand overseas with new technologies, better ships, and efficient production methods. The ability to produce goods on a massive scale transformed trade, creating a global network that tied colonies and Britain in complex economic relationships. This period solidified Britain as a global power, but also set the stage for future challenges. Colonies became more aware of their own value and potential, planting the seeds for eventual demands for independence. The second turning point: World War I was a turning point in both the perception and reality of imperial power. Britain emerged victorious, but at a tremendous cost, financially, socially, and politically. Millions of soldiers from colonies fought for Britain, and their sacrifices strengthened calls for political recognition and autonomy. The war revealed the vulnerabilities of empires and sparked nationalist movements in India, Egypt, and the Middle East. The conflict demonstrated that Britain could no longer sustain unquestioned authority over vast territories without addressing the aspirations of its subjects. The third turning point, World War II and the decline of imperial authority. World War II was perhaps the most decisive turning point in Britain's transformation. Once again, Britain fought a global conflict, but the aftermath left it economically weakened and politically strained. Colonial subjects had contributed massively to the war effort, heightening demands for independence. At the same time, the United States and the Soviet Union emerged as superpowers, reshaping the global balance and challenging Britain's traditional dominance. The war made it clear the old imperial model was no longer sustainable. Britain faced a choice: cling to empire at great cost or adapt to a new world order. The fourth turning point, India's independence, 1947. India's independence was both symbolic and practical. It was the first major colony to achieve freedom through organized political struggle, under leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. The British decision to grant independence to India reflected a recognition of changing realities. Nationalism could no longer be suppressed, and Britain's global role had to evolve. India's independence sparked a wave of decolonization across Africa, the Caribbean, and Asia, marking the beginning of the end for formal British imperial rule. The fifth turning point, the formation of the Commonwealth, 1931, post-1947, even before India gained independence, the seeds of the Commonwealth were being sown. The Statute of Westminster in 1931 recognized the autonomy of self-governing dominions such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, establishing a legal framework for voluntary association rather than control. After World War II and India's independence, the Commonwealth took shape as a network of nations united by shared history, values, and cooperation rather than domination. This turning point redefined Britain's global identity, from imperial ruler to partner, from authority to collaborator. The sixth turning point, decolonization across Africa and the Caribbean. The 1950s and 1960s witnessed rapid decolonization. Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Jamaica, and many others achieved independence, transforming the political landscape of the modern world. Britain's willingness to support this transition, while maintaining diplomatic and economic ties, reinforced the Commonwealth as a platform for partnership and dialogue. These events underscored a profound shift. Influence no longer depended on control, but on respect, cooperation, and shared goals. The seventh turning point, the modern Commonwealth and global cooperation in recent decades. The Commonwealth has grown into a vibrant association of over 50 countries. While historical ties remain, its focus has shifted toward global challenges: education, trade, sustainable development, and human rights. Britain's transformation is complete in this sense, from the imperious ruler of a global empire to an active participant in a collaborative network of nations. This modern turning point highlights the enduring power of diplomacy, partnership, and shared values in shaping the world. Each of these turning points, industrialization, the world wars, India's independence, decolonization, and the evolution of the Commonwealth, represents moments when Britain's trajectory changed fundamentally. They remind us that transformation is not sudden. It is a series of decisions, struggles, and adaptations. They show how a nation can evolve from power built on dominance to influence rooted in collaboration. In reflecting on these turning points, we understand that history is not merely a record of events. It is a story of adaptation, resilience, and foresight. Britain's ability to navigate these critical moments, learn from them, and embrace change allowed it to redefine its role in the modern world. The journey from empire to Commonwealth teaches us that the most enduring influence comes not from force or conquest, but from respect, partnership, and shared vision. As we reflect on Britain's remarkable journey from empire to Commonwealth, we see more than just a story of territorial expansion or political change. We see a story of adaptation, resilience, and the enduring power of human connection. From the heights of imperial dominance to the creation of a voluntary global network, Britain's transformation reminds us that true influence is not measured by control or conquest, but by respect, collaboration, and shared vision. The turning points we have explored, industrialization, the world wars, India's independence, the wave of decolonization, and the evolution of the Commonwealth, each represent moments of choice. In those moments, Britain could have clung to the past, resisting change. Instead, it embraced transformation. It recognized that power without partnership is fleeting, and that the future belongs to those willing to redefine themselves and build bridges instead of walls. The Commonwealth stands today as a living testament to that vision, a network of over 50 nations, diverse yet united, thriving not because of dominance, but because of shared values, dialogue, and cooperation. It is proof that history's lessons, when acknowledged and applied wisely, can create a foundation for peace, progress, and mutual prosperity. But beyond the historical facts, beyond dates and treaties, there is a deeper message for all of us. Britain's journey teaches us that transformation is possible even after periods of conflict, loss, or decline. It teaches us that relationships, trust, and collaboration are stronger and more enduring than authority enforced by fear or force. And it teaches us that our past, no matter how complex, can be transformed into a foundation for a brighter, inclusive, and cooperative future. As we leave today, let us carry this lesson forward, not only in understanding global history, but in shaping the world we live in. Let us embrace change when it is needed, build connections across divides, and recognize that the most powerful influence comes from partnership, respect, and shared purpose. From empire to Commonwealth, Britain's transformation is a story of vision, courage, and adaptability. Let it inspire us all to approach our own challenges with the same willingness to learn, evolve, and build a future where unity and collaboration triumph over division and domination.